Hello YouTube. Welcome back from my stoop, and I'm continuing my series on the same day with the same cold. Where's my temper? You know, you've got thousands of tempers, but when you need it, it's gone. And I'm still using my Zulu, very fitting for the series, with the penzance. So just a quick disclaimer again. The following series will be my opinion and my perspective and perception of South Africa and history and apartheid. And I do not claim to be an historian. So it's more about, my experiences and how I see it. I also need maybe to say that I'm very progressive / liberal in terms of my political views, and was the rest will become clear later. So I ended up with Verwoerd declaring South Africa as a republic. So you can just imagine how nationalistic, how that boomed the nationalistic pride in the government and in the population at the time. Oh, by the way, at that time, after the union, obviously all 4 provinces, Gauteng, Transvaal, Free State, KZN or Natal, and Cape Province, was then united as one country. So that was a nationalistic boom. And then Verwoerd was murdered in Parliament in 1966, and John Vorster took over as Prime Minister. Now, that's where my experiences and remembering is now more and more clear, because I was born in the 1960s, 60 exactly, as a 60 model. So my childhood remembering of John Vorster was a very charismatic, very good orator, very good politician in terms of conveying his messages, very hard, guts to stand on what he believed in. So in his time, in the time that he was Prime Minister, apartheid was really being driven, not only as segregation of friendly people in different areas, but really as a policy and as the only way forward for South Africa and for people to be themselves and to preserve their cultures and things. So in his time also was the time that the ANC went underground. In his time, it was the time that the ANC also reverted to arms struggle, because they said that the arms, or the use of weapons and the state machinery by the government at the time, was equal to, what can they do if they haven't got any arms? Then obviously they need to answer with arms. It's also a time when the ANC was banned as an organization. Mandela was banned. You were not allowed to even speak about Mandela. So more and more apartheid laws were putting on in the law book and were enforced. The different areas where they need to live in. The fact that black people were not allowed to be in the towns, in the cities after 6. It was really a vicious policy that was implemented. You're not allowed to, black and white were not allowed to mix. They were underpaid in cheap labor. They were allowed to work in the cities and for white people, but at the evenings they need to go back to their townships, normally bordering towns. And it's also in that time when the independent black states were advertised or were started, because they said, let the different, we've got 11 different languages in South Africa, so apart from English and Afrikaans, there's 9 other local black groups, and the decision was, well, let each of them have their own piece of country where they can independently then also have their own government system. Some of them took it and made something about it, but obviously it was a policy decision which could never work. It would break South Africa into 11 different countries or 10, and it's not sustainable. But they believed that would be, the best thing to do. And obviously after John Vorster came P.W. Botha, who was even worse in terms of applying this law with force. So one of the tactics of the government was to quench the ANC and the resistance in any form or matter they could. And the ANC going underground then, and a lot of ANC members and especially the leadership went in exile to Denmark, Russia, in Africa, and from there they then leaded the organization and used it as a platform to launch their attacks against South Africa. So a lot of neighboring countries also was part of that base where they could then launch from their attack against South Africa. And then luckily P.W. Botha was set off after he got a stroke in 1988-89. The leadership of the National Party at the time just said to him, you know what, you don't want to retire, but we vote you out. You will retire. And he had to retire, and that was the beginning of F.W. de Klerk, and he started the change to a new democratic South Africa. So that's, in short, just a brief, that's very brief, but that's a brief story of how this thing came about. I remember in 1990, there was kind of a buzz when F.W. de Klerk took over power in 1989. It's as if we knew something is on the cards, but we were not really sure. And then came the opening of Parliament speech in 2 February 1990, in which he, declared the ANC not secret or not an banned organization anymore, released Mandela, etc., etc. So for me at least, as a very progressive and liberal Afrikaans-speaking person, I was ecstatic because, let me first now go back to growing up under apartheid. So for me, growing up under apartheid from 1960, at first, for the first few years, you're not very political inclined, so you don't know much that's going on, except that everything is just white. Your school is pure white, your towns are white. We had a black house workers, domestic workers. That's the one who gave me my name. But they were not allowed to stay to stay in the white towns. They were allowed to stay maybe in a room which you would prepare for them, but otherwise they need to go back to the townships. So for many years, I was oblivious about the effects of what it exactly entailed and what was happening. Until around about my last school year, I was at that stage. That's just after the 1976 uprising. So I was kind of getting uneasy with this, but didn't understand where and what. So I was still then than part of the normal Afrikaner kid environment. The government, the National Party government at the time, did obviously everything in their power, and they used every means possible, whether it's newspaper, books, TV, school education program, holiday programs, everything they used as a vehicle to promote the apartheid policy and principles. So, and the reason I'm saying that is because there's a lot of brainwashing that went, which I can still see today in a lot of people. Brainwashing that went along as if, this policy was the preservation of Christianity in Africa. Some even called it a holy war and all kinds of things like that. So in general, the towns were, and our experience were very safe South Africa. The police force obviously patrolled and kept the town safe. So, crime and those kind of things were obviously very low, but only in the white towns. And that's what people can't understand today when the crime rate of today and of those times are compared. It looks like as if crime has increased a lot. It's not necessarily. The difference was the crime statistics was white South Africa being protected by the police. But the crime in the townships, we never knew about, we never heard it, no one protected them. And as I spoke to one of my black friends, he told me one day that the crime today and the crime those days in townships are exactly the same, nothing changed. So the difference between the statistics is now we see the crime rate of the whole South Africa being measured, not only in white towns being protected by police according to the government policy. So that was one thing that that obviously affected our opinion of the safetiness of living in South Africa. We had a false safety feeling, and a lot of people today who are not progressive and who long back to the apartheid days think about how safe it was, but they don't realize that it's a false safetiness which we actually didn't have. So to me, this policy of black people being allowed to work in the towns and work as domestic workers, but not allowed to stay here, or only the domestic worker to stay in a room, is also one of the effects which I believe will take more than one generation to fix, because the policy broke up family structures. Mother worked in a house as a domestic worker. Father worked maybe in the mines or as a garden worker. They either stayed in the room of where they worked, not necessarily in the same place, or one had to return back to the township every night 6 o'clock. And if they stayed in, which a lot of black people did, the kids were raised by grandparents. So the kids never saw the mother except for weekends maybe, or things like that. So that was really in terms of my belief now of how family structures operate as a Christian. I think that is something that we will have to tolerate for generations to come, in terms of broken up family structures and discipline and everything that goes with it. That is how the environment were. My next video I will then share more with you about how I started to change from the brainwashing and what happened to me and how it happened, so that, as a turning point also in my life. But that is what it was up till that stage. And if I left something out, feel free to ask and to comment on the comments down. I'm trying to give a brief bird's eye view, but obviously there's detail there which can be filled in by questions or other opinions. So, thank you for watching, and please leave your comments and stay tuned. Number 3 is on its way. Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.